Hello, Year 10. The next PowerPoint that we're going to look at is English Language Paper 2. Now, again, very similar to Paper 1, this paper is an hour and 45 minutes long. But in this one, it asks you to look at the writer's viewpoints and the perspectives of the writer. Okay, so once again, as with Paper 1, you have a Section A and a Section B. Both sections are worth 40 marks each. Okay, question 1, 2, 3 and 4 split up. 4 marks, 8 marks, 12 marks and 16 marks. And then once again, your section B, your writing section, is worth 40 marks alone. Okay, so a quick overview of the questions. Question 1, you'll be given 8 statements, a section of the source, and you'll be asked to shade in the correct statements. Now, in contrast to question 1 of paper 1, question 1 on paper 2 will also require you to read between the lines and find implicit information. Okay, so there will be maybe 1 or 2 of the statements that are obvious, and you can obviously spot those explicitly because it's mentioned explicitly in the extract. However, maybe 2 or 3 of them will potentially be implicit information. So what does that mean? It will not state the statement explicitly in the source. You will need to read between the lines and use your brain and look a little bit more in detail at that one. Again, it's only worth 4 marks, so do not spend more than 5 minutes on that question. Okay, so then question 2, worth 8 marks, and it's a summary of the differences or similarities of both sources. Okay, so you will take source A and source B for this question, and you are just writing a summary of either the differences or the similarities. It will ask you in the question as to which one it's looking for and as to which one it wants a summary of. Okay, question 3, again, how does the writer use language? So it's exactly the same as question 2 on language paper 1. You just need to find 1 or 2 more detailed points, obviously because it's 4 marks more. And question 4, it is testing your implicit information finding. Okay, now it's sort of similar to question 2, except in this one you'll be looking at the different techniques that each writer uses to compare their different perspectives and their different viewpoints on a specific topic. With this one, it's worth 16 marks, so I would look for potentially 3 on each source. Okay, and compare those 3 or 4. Now, with that again, as I mentioned before, it's testing implicit information. So the writers will not always explicitly state what their viewpoint is. You might have to read between the lines and look a little bit deeper. And section B, the writing section, is once again worth 40 marks. You've got that split of 24 and 16. But in this one, rather than creative or descriptive writing, you'll be writing a non-fiction text, and it will be writing about your own viewpoints. So something similar to what we've done in class when I've asked you to consider whether you agree, whether you disagree with something, and it could ask you to write to argue, or write a letter to argue your point of view on a specific statement. Okay, so again, I will skip over question 1 because that's something that I can't really go over. It's just about your information finding skills within the extract from the source. Okay, so on question 2, write a summary of. So if we look at what the question will ask, you need to refer to source A and source B for this question. The things to see and do at Glastonbury Festival and Greenwich Fair are different. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences. Now, this question, do not spend more than 10 or 12 minutes on it, okay? One other thing that you do not need to talk about are the literary techniques and the devices that the writer uses. Okay, you just need to summarize how their viewpoints are different. Okay, how are their ideas on the topic, so the things to see and do at Glastonbury and Greenwich, are different. Okay, so if you look at the answer or the paragraph there, in source A, the writer suggests that one thing to see are acts such as Coldplay, Elvis Costello, and the American rock band The Killers, which suggest Glastonbury is a popular and well-funded festival. However, in lines 1 to 13 of source B, Dickens presents a comprehensive list of things to see, with the intention of giving an overwhelming sense of the occasion, suggesting that quality may be compromised by quantity. Okay, so if we just decode that, then you can see here. Okay, so if I highlight this bit here, Coldplay, Elvis Costello, and the American rock band The Killers, the person has specifically used a quote. Okay, they've specifically used evidence to show what they are describing. So one of the things to see and do at Glastonbury. Okay, now there it's only mentioned 3 artists. Okay, you've got Coldplay, Elvis Costello, and The Killers. In source B, they're talking between lines 1 to 13, and they're showing a comprehensive list. Okay, so there you've got one main difference between source A is just saying that one thing that you can see are the acts such as Coldplay, Elvis Costello, and The Killers. So they're only naming 3 specific bands there, where in lines 1 to 13, Charles Dickens is presenting a comprehensive list. Okay, so what you can see there is they are using implicit information. Okay, it suggests that Glastonbury is a popular and well-funded festival. Now, it doesn't specifically and explicitly state that. However, because they've got these 3 huge headlining acts, you can assume, okay, Coldplay are a popular band, The Killers are a popular band, and Elvis Costello was a popular singer. Okay, you can infer. Okay, remember, inference is reading between the lines and coming up with your own ideas, that Glastonbury is popular and well-funded. Okay, now, if we're looking at source B, where Dickens presents a comprehensive list, okay, and it gives this overwhelming sense of the occasion, so it suggests that it's a massive occasion, but it suggests that the quality may be compromised by the quantity. Okay, so again, he's not specifically stating that, but because the person who has written this is inferring that because there's so many things to do at Greenwich Fair, it suggests that the quality isn't as strong as Glastonbury Festival. Okay, so hopefully you can see there that, again, they've not mentioned, yes, they've talked about a comprehensive list, and you could argue that a list is a literary device, but they're not really going in to say how they've used that. Okay, they're just talking about the differences between Glastonbury and Greenwich. Okay, question 3. How does the writer use language 2? Okay, you now need to refer only to source B, Dickens' description of the fair itself from line 19 to the end. How does Dickens use language to make you, the reader, feel part of the fair? Okay, this one is worth 12 marks. I'm not going to bang on too much about it, okay, because it's exactly the same skills as question 2 on language paper 1, but obviously it's worth 12 marks, not 8 marks. Okay, so what I would suggest you do, if in language paper 1 you're finding 3 techniques, okay, so you're using language techniques, words and phrases, and the sentence forms, then you need to look at one more technique within language paper 2, okay, to get you 12 marks. So if we look there, one way in which Dickens makes the reader feel part of the fair is by using language that appeals to the sense of sound. Okay, there we go. So we've got sensory imagery. Words such as scream, shouts, clanging, firing, bellowing all convey the impression of intense level of noise. Furthermore, this listing of sounds, okay, you've got another technique there. Listing of sounds has the cumulative effect suggesting that it is quite overwhelming. Perhaps Dickens may be indicating that the experience is a mixture of pleasure and discomfort. In either case, this aids the reader in feeling a part of the fair. Okay, so you can see there that once again they've used language techniques there. So you've got the sensory imagery there. You've got the listing of the sounds, so screaming, shouting, clanging, firing, bellowing. You've got that understanding here of the effect of this sensory imagery. You've got further, I'll just highlight it in another colour. Furthermore, yeah, has a cumulative effect, so we've gone further. Okay, we've not just looked at one idea, and then we've summed it up here. In either case, this aids the reader in feeling a part of the fair. Okay, so if you see there, they have linked it back to the question. Okay, and always spoke about the effect of the language and the effect of the techniques on the reader. Okay, now what I always tell you, remember what, how, and why. So what have they used? Okay, so the sense of sound or the listing of sounds. How have they used it? Well, they've used it to suggest that the fair is quite overwhelming because of the amount of sounds. And why have they used it? Well, it shows that the experience is a mixture of pleasure and discomfort, and it aids the reader in feeling a part of the fair. Okay then, so question 4. Okay, it's your 16 marker, so it's your extended writing piece here on the on the reading section. Compare the different viewpoints and perspectives. Okay, so for this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers have conveyed their different views and experiences of the festival and fair they describe. In your answer, you could compare the different views and experiences, compare the methods they use to convey those views and experiences, and support your ideas with references to both texts. Okay, so it is in a way similar to question 2 because you are looking at those different viewpoints and perspectives, but in this one you need to discuss literary techniques. Okay, you need to look at writers' methods in this one. Okay, so let's have a look at the model paragraph. The writer of source A has a negative impression of Glastonbury, at least at the start of his article. Dickens, however, seems to be enthusiastic about Greenwich Fair throughout. The title of source A, Are We Having Fun Yet?, is a rhetorical question suggesting irony, an idea reinforced by the picture of a person standing in a large muddy pool of water, which is not an image of fun. Source B, however, is called Dickens Lets His Hair Down, which indicates a carefree attitude at odds with that in source A. Okay, so what have we got there? If we highlight, the writer of source A has a negative impression. Okay, so straight away we're going into that point, we're making that point, and we're looking at how the writer of source A has conveyed their different view, okay, of the festival. Now, if he goes on, when he goes on there, the title of source A, Are We Having Fun Yet? Okay, so we've got evidence there. Is a rhetorical question. We've now got language technique. Okay, rhetorical question. Suggesting irony. Okay, so we've got another technique there. An idea reinforced by the picture of a person standing in a large muddy pool of water. Okay, so again here, it's not explicit. It's not explicit evidence, but obviously if you had the source A there in front of you, you would have that image on the newspaper article. Okay, which is not an image of fun. So again, suggesting, let's go with purple. Okay, summing up, why has that person used it? I understand purple is probably not a great colour for that, but there we go. Okay, source B, however, so we're using that comparative language here again, is called Dickens Lets His Hair Down. So once again there we have the evidence to support that, which indicates a carefree attitude at odds with that in source A. Okay, so we've gone there, we've said why has he used that title, okay, and linked it back to the different view with that in source A. Now what I would potentially have done within source B here now is source B, when the person's gone on to describe source B, they've not really used any subject terminology. Okay, so what I would do then, if you are going to go on to then discuss source B, I would then use or find a language technique in source B to be able to then compare again with source A and compare how the the view and the experience is different in source B than to source A. Okay, so once again, always use your initiative in this question, okay, and identify that implicit information. Now, here, the person who's answered it has put the writer of source A has a negative impression. Okay, now it doesn't necessarily mean just because they've used the rhetorical question and they've got the image of a person standing in a muddy pool of water, that doesn't necessarily mean that the writer has a negative impression. He might just be imposing that impression as to what he thinks the festival goers might be feeling. Okay, once again, they're not, even within this little section, you can see that they're not explicitly stating that viewpoint, and the person who's answered it has had to use some sort of inference. Okay, so you've got that idea there. Are we having fun yet? And then a person standing in a large muddy pool of water. You could infer that there is a negative experience or a negative impression of Glastonbury, of that festival. Not specifically stating it, but you could infer. Okay, now always use, because we're talking about differences and we're comparing, use comparative language. Okay, so you can see there, source B, however, however's one, in contrast to source A, in contrast to source B. If you are talking about any similarities, obviously you can say similarly, and then also the other comparative language that we know. Sentence starters, the writer could be conveying, okay, or the writer presents. So maybe if we're looking at the question, you could say the writer of source A presents a negative impression of Glastonbury at the start of his article. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly as it's written. Okay then, so question 5, writing about your own viewpoint. Okay, so this will be non-fiction writing. Again, it's worth 40 marks, so you're getting 24 marks for your content and your organisation, and 16 marks for your spelling, punctuation and grammar, your technical accuracy. So once again, it's very important. Okay, now this section, I would spend about an hour again on it, 5 minutes planning, 45 minutes writing, and 10 minutes checking. Now again, you can take 5 minutes off the checking and add 5 minutes to the writing. It's entirely up to you how you split that time, but always make sure you're giving yourself time at the beginning to plan what you are going to write, and give yourself some time at the end as well to check over, as I said on the previous one, to be able to reread and make any amendments as necessary. Okay, now because it's non-fiction, you could be asked to write a number of things. You could be asked to write a speech. Okay, you could be asked to write a newspaper article. You could be asked to write a letter, an essay, or any other genre. So it might be a blog, it could be a magazine article, anything like that. Okay, so again, what they will give you a statement, and then it will ask you to write your non-fiction text. So for this one, for example, festivals and fairs should be banned. They encourage bad behaviour and are disruptive to local communities. Write a letter to your local newspaper in which you argue for or against this statement. Okay, so if we look then, okay, I'll highlight this. Remember, tap, okay, text type, audience and purpose. So your text type here is a letter. Okay, your audience is a local newspaper, so people within your vicinity. Okay, and your purpose is argue for or against. Okay, so your text type is your letter. Your audience is a local newspaper, so it could be newspaper readers, young or old. And then your purpose is to argue for or against the statement. Now, what you need to do is, regardless of whether it says it's a blog or it's a magazine article, you still need to make your writing formal. Okay, it still needs to be legible, but it needs to be interesting and lively. Okay, always use literary techniques. So remember, if you're arguing, you could use facts, make up some facts, make up a quote from an expert, for example. Also, if you're writing to argue or persuade, which it usually will be, look at ethos, pathos and logos. Now I will go through that on the next slide, but it is something that will majorly help with arguments. Okay, so in terms of layout, you need to lay it out as the as the text type is asking you to do. Okay, so obviously if we look at this example here, you've got the address on the right hand side, and then obviously Dear Editor. Okay, you can see there what they've done. They have used quotes from the actual statement. So festivals should be banned, encourage bad behaviour, and disruptive. Okay, far from being disruptive. They are occasions which members of the community look forward to. Okay, so that would be ethos. Okay, so the idea and your point is looking at ethos. Pathos is then where you're talking about the emotions, you're appealing to the emotion of the audience. And then logos is what are you going to do to rectify it. Okay, so yeah, as I said there, ethos then, credibility, it's setting out the reasons behind your argument. So why do you not think, for example, festivals are disruptive to the community? Pathos then is where you're appealing to the emotion of the reader. Okay, now you obviously want to use your emotive language here. Okay, you could, for example, if you're talking about a festival in a local community, you could talk about how it might affect tourism, how it might affect the economy. Okay, and looking at that, and then your logos is your next steps or how to combat it. Okay, so you're setting out specific ways of how you would go about changing it. Okay, so if you don't agree, what should they do instead? If you do agree that festivals should be banned, again, what should you do instead? Okay, so it's the logic behind it. Okay, hopefully that's helped. If you have got any questions, please just leave me a comment in the obviously the comment section. I'll show my homework. I will do more of these. I've done paper 1 and paper 2, so I will be looking at maybe doing literature ones in the coming days. So that includes Inspector Calls and Christmas Carol and the poems as well. So if there are anything that you need specifically, please just leave a comment and I will endeavour to go through the ones that are most requested. Okay, thank you, and once again I hope it's been helpful, and remember, stay safe. Okay, goodbye.